इसमें थोड़ा सा वो भी।
गिरीश जी नमस्कार। मेरे चैनल पे आज दूसरी बार मेरे ख्याल से हम मिल रहे हैं और आज बात करेंगे रसिया के ऊपर जो इकोनॉमिक सैंक्शंस लगाए हैं वेस्टर्न पावर्स ने। और आजकल तो G7 की मीटिंग भी चल रही है और वो सैंक्शंस और स्ट्रीमलाइन होने जा रहे हैं। तो मेरा एक्चुअली आपसे जो सवाल है वो सवाल ये है कि जब ये लड़ाई शुरू हुई थी तो इसके दो बड़े एकदम से लोगों ने कॉन्क्लूजन्स निकाल लिए थे। पहला कॉन्क्लूजन तो ये निकाला था कि 7 दिन के अंदर यूक्रेन कैपिचुलेट कर जाएगा और बाई एनी चांस अगर रशिया के ऊपर सैंक्शंस लगते हैं तो 3-4 महीने में उसकी इकोनॉमी भी कैपिचुलेट कर जाएगी। अब ये दोनों ही अजम्पशंस जो हैं वो गलत प्रूव हुए। तो आज मिलिट्री एक्सपेक्ट्स की बात तो कम करेंगे, इकोनॉमी की बात ज़्यादा करेंगे। तो रशिया के ऊपर जो सैंक्शंस लगे हैं, और आई बिलीव कि इससे ज़्यादा सीवियर सैंक्शंस किसी के ऊपर लगे नहीं कभी, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी रशियन इकोनॉमी आज की डेट में इट इज एब्सोल्युटली ऑल राइट। अपेरेंटली तो ऐसा ही लगता है। मैं आपसे जानना चाहूंगा, ओवर टू यू।
थैंक यू, वीरेंद्र सिंह। As we know, we are discussing in the backdrop of the G7 summit, which is happening. In the background, why this G7 or so-called G6 or G8 started? Its background is 1971 war, Israel-Arab war, when the oil shock created a havoc in the international market. And to counter that, or not only to counter, but to stabilize the economy and other things. So first, a library group was formed in 1973, which was in 1975, G6 nation, means the top GDP 6 countries were part of this nation, which include US, UK, Germany, France, Italy, Japan. उस समय के जो टॉप 6 कंट्रीज थे वो उसमें थे. In 76, Canada was also included. And later on in 1998, Russia was also included. So it became G6, G7, and G8. Now, in 2014, after Crimea inclusion or accession by China, Russia, and other things, Russia was kept out of this G7 summit. So this is the background. Now, incidentally, same thing is happening of the oil shock. Now, what was started this G7 reason? Now the same thing is happening. Now, world is facing the same music. Now we are coming to the same point: why Russia is able to withstand and why it is happening, not as per the expectation of the countries who started this sanction or restriction and other things to contain Russia. Now, if we look into today's environment, what are the basic requirement in any country? One is food, another is the transportation, which person can move freely within his area of movement, and other thing. I'll take you a little back from today's environment to what happened in mid 90s when Iraq was under sanction after Kuwait invasion and other thing. And during that period also, there was a very tough sanction. All those things were export, import, all those things were restricted from Iraq. But how Iraq was able to sustain it? Because unlike other Arab countries, they were having a rich uh, agriculture between their rivers. And so food was good enough. And they were producing their own crude and oil. So they were providing almost free to their people. Now, once these two basic needs are met, the day-to-day activities of the countries can be sustained if basic need food and other movements related to his work are met. Now, what is happening in Russia? If we look at from the Russian point of view, they are one of the biggest exporter of the food in the world. And it is almost, say, if we look at their total import and export in 2020 or 2021, they were exporting around $330 billion worth of commodities, which is mainly crude, gas, gasoline, and all those things. And food was also one of their major export. And their import was $220 billion. So they were having a surplus of $110 billion before this thing, war was started. Now, if we are not taking into their export, which is related to the arms and defense, which is our countries and other manner countries are taking. I'm talking about the regular export and which is coming, because armaments are one time, means which is happening in a long-term contract and other thing, but the regular export was 330 and import was 220. So they were having a surplus of 110 billion. Regarding food, as I said, they were exporting $10 billion worth of food, wheats and other cereals to the world. And crude, of course, they were one of the biggest producer and exporter. So now they are able to meet their local requirement of in these two fronts. Now, what is happening to the sanction things? To explain it in a simple way, I will give you one practical example. We were having an unincorporated JV. I will not name the companies, where one overseas company was our partner, private company was partner, and a PSU was partner.
Okay.
As per the standard process, when we are going for a tender and other thing, we invite companies to bid for certain item under certain terms and conditions. So there we were asking for a ship vessels, which is to be provided, offshore vessel for regular use and other thing. So one company has provided, and part of the contract was also to include insurance of those items, means where the service was included. The other company, which was the regular to our contract and other thing, he was L2. And the difference was more than 10% of the value of the contract value. So now if we look into the total scenario, we were three partners, as I said, PSU, private company, and a foreign company. So PSU company's position was very clear, since L1 means the lowest party, which has not given insurance as a part of it. So we will not consider it in our tender evaluation, and we'll discuss the things with L2, and we'll go with the L2, which is a normal in Indian scenario, which is the case. Foreign companies was telling why these particular things are happening, to whom you are penalizing. So they said, since this company has not fulfilled the requirement, PSU company said, we are penalizing the company who has not submitted the full bid, means including insurance. And incidentally, insurance value was total of less than 1% of the total overall contract value. So if we look at 10% difference between L1 and L2, 1% if you make it also, so it was 9% lower than the L2. But the PSU company's position was, no, he has not fulfilled, so we are penalizing this company and we'll go for L2. But now imagine the situation. The foreign company said, you are not penalizing the company, you are penalizing yourself. Why? Because you are paying 10% more than what you are supposed to pay. Okay, now what is happening in today's scenario? Is it not similar to that? The companies who are putting sanction, to whom they have penalized? They have penalized Russia, yes, but at the same time, they have penalized themselves also in a process. If there was a sufficient time, they had considered pros and cons in details of what they are sanctioning, what is not allowing, what is not allowing, probably they would not have gone into this harsh measure in a hurry. And then situation would have been slightly better than what today they all are facing, including Russia. But as I said, energy is one of the major export. Now, if I look at $330 billion, which is the export, majority, which is something around $200 billion, is related to energy export from Russia. Now, yeah, Russia, which is exporting, say, $75 billion in crude, $40 billion in finished product, and then gas. So all those things, which is a major chunk of export, is their energy. Rest is gold, coal, and we can say food and other products, which is there, which is exporting. Now, which is the biggest importer of these things? If we look at that, China was their biggest importer, but next was Europe. If you look into Europe as a whole, then they were bigger than the China. So ultimately, higher price because of this sanction and the thing is hurting Europe and other countries. Now, as I said, Russia is able to manage it because of their basic requirement of the public. But at the same time, they're also having a dent in their normal operation, because this expenditure which is happening in the war is kind of a destructive. It is not constructive. If these kind of things are happening in a constructive way, then it is generating employment as well as revenue. But as of now, because of the war, the expenditure which is happening is just not constructive, but destructive kind of a thing. So in a longer run, they will have a problem. We have also heard today, because on Monday they were not able to make payment of $100 million as a bond, uh, which was due payment, first payment. It was more of a technical reason, not because of they were not having the money, just because Swift has not, they were cut off from the Swift and the European transition system. So they were not able to make payment, though they were having the money. So it's a technical thing, but in a way, they were having a one blot on their 100 years of time. They were not able to honor their bond. So this is the thing. Now, if we look at from the longer aspect, I think winter, how severe this winter is, and how important or how critical for the European Union and the other countries to substitute Russian import, which so far they were making it. If they were not able to make it, so it is very difficult for them to compensate or get an alternate 10 million barrel per day kind of an alternate, of which suppose let's say China is one of the biggest. So there's still 5 to 6 million barrel kind of a thing which was going to the Europe. They have to identify, and if they are not able to identify, the prices will be high, or there will be some restriction on their movement or heating, or depending upon that. So I think Russia, China, or Russia Ukraine war and other thing, this next coming 3-4 months, and how severe the winter, it will have an impact on Europe as well as on Russia and other countries.
हाँ गिरीश जी, मैं एक्चुअली पढ़ रहा था आज एक जगह, तो उसमें जो टोटल इनका एक्सपेंडिचर आ रहा पर डे का लड़ाई का, दैट इज $1 बिलियन पर डे, विच इज़ अ वेरी वेरी ह्यूज अमाउंट। और अभी क्या हो गया, जो लड़ाई चल रही है वो बेसिकली आर्टिलरी सेलिंग चल रही है, लॉन्ग रेंज
Yeah,
आर्टिलरी
correct.
अभी लगे पड़े हैं वो उसमें। और जैसा उन्होंने चेचनिया में किया था ना, उन्होंने जो ग्रॉन्जी को पूरा ग्राउंडेड कर दिया था आरटी से, आर्टिलरी फायर से, और यही यहाँ पे करने जा रहे हैं अगर इनका बस चला तो। अब उसमें 60 to 70,000 आर्टिलरी सेल्स डेली जब फायर करेगा रसिया, और ये बहुत कॉस्टली अफेयर है, तो दैट इज वन
Correct.
पार्ट। दूसरा जो इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट मैं आपसे बताने जा रहा हूँ, जो मैंने उसमें मतलब गूगल पे देखा, ऑलमोस्ट 60 to 70,000 इनके जो आईटी प्रोफेशनल्स हैं वो माइग्रेट
Hmm.
कर गए। अब वो मोस्ट प्रॉब्ली आर्मेनिया इज द वन अट्रैक्टिव प्लेस, तो आई वाज क्वाइट सरप्राइज्ड विद दैट, बट ऑब्वियसली वो सब जगह गए होंगे। और उसके अलावा जो इनकी एरोस्पेस इंडस्ट्री है, जहाँ पे हाईली टेक्निकल कंपोनेंट्स की जरूरत पड़ती है, इंटीग्रेटेड चिप्स की जरूरत पड़ती है, वो सब इनका अफेक्ट होगा, और वो हो रहा है। बेसिक
Correct.
चीज तो ठीक है कि इनके पास दे हैव गॉट लॉट ऑफ जो व्हीट प्रोडक्ट्स में काफ़ी अच्छी खासा प्रोडक्शन है इनका, व्हीट का कोई इशू नहीं है, ईटेबल आइटम्स का भी इशू नहीं है, बट जो हाईटेक आइटम्स हैं उसका तो होगा। बट लोगों के दिमाग में एक बहुत बड़ा क्वेश्चन आ रहा है, वो क्वेश्चन ये आ रहा है कि यूरोपियन यूनियन वाले क्या चाह रहे थे, और स्पेशली जैसे यूरोपियन यूनियन के साथ अमेरिका का नाम भी जुड़ा हुआ है। What exactly they wanted? They wanted to continue import from Russia, especially oil and gas, और एटलीस्ट कुछ कम कर लें। तो पहला क्वेश्चन तो मेरा आपसे ये होगा कि यूरोपियन यूनियन के पास अल्टरनेटिव है क्या? हैव दे गोट एनी अदर चॉइस टू फॉर इंपोर्ट ऑफ ऑयल एंड गैस?
See, let's see which are the biggest producer of oil and gas. US is the biggest producer, then Russia, then Saudi, and then we are having Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, and Malaysia, Nigeria, and other countries. In gas, Russia is one of the biggest producer, US is one of the biggest producer, and Kuwait. These are the three if we look into energy sector, oil and gas. Now, Kuwait is already reaching to its limit, whatever the gas they are producing, and there already been long term and short term which is happening. So Europe Union is already taking. Now, US is one of the major source, alternate source to Europe after Russia, to provide them that energy, because US is having an LNG which they can supply it to European Union. But there are many European nations which do not have LNG regasification facilities. For example, Hungary, Poland, which they are having their gas pipeline. So they have to depend upon other countries. Either they will take it and then regasify and provide it to them, for which they will need a bigger infrastructure, means gas pipeline from, let's say, at presently, they were having a gas pipeline from Russia to country ABC. Now, ABCs do not have the regasification or port, another thing to have a LNG directly can take it. So they will depend on the other country like UK and other from where LNG can come. And but then how they will take this LNG regasified gas from this country to ABC until unless they are having a pipeline. And this pipeline is an onshore part which is very difficult to have it because it requires environmental clearance. You require a land, you require a special planning and other thing, which is not so easy. So these countries which are depending upon the gas pipeline directly from Russia, I doubt they are having a very alternate, practical alternate. Of course, they can get it from here and there something, but not for a long term and for the long quantity. But whatever LNG US can spare can come to Europe, and countries which are importing LNG can take care of it, even though a little higher because of the transportation and other things, but can go. The very important point which you raised, Virendra ji, ki Russia, apart from these two things, they were having a very highly technical team, which they do not have now opportunities to either work in Europe or in other places or work from Russia and export those things. So they will be frustrated or they will not have that work at home with them or thing. So this will be one of the major cause of worry from Russia to have this sustain or to continue this kind of a war for a long period. For short period, yes, one can have it. For long period, it will be a very, very difficult. So Russia is one of the major sufferer of this war after Ukraine. So they have to find an alternate or option for these people where they can work apart from basic need of food and fuel. So they have to find an alternate face-saving formula or some way to work out and come out of this web which was created by partially by them and by other nations.
इनफैक्ट अभी ताइवान ने भी ज्वाइन कर लिया, जो सैंक्शंस जो रशिया पे लगी हैं उसमें ताइवान भी पार्टी है। और आई वाज रीडिंग समवेयर कि जो इंटीग्रेटेड चिप्स हैं वो ताइवान से उनके पास पहले आती थी, और अब जो रशिया के पास जो इंटीग्रेटेड चिप्स हैं वो हैं जो 20 साल पहले यूज होती थी। तो जब आप
Correct.
20 साल पुरानी इंटीग्रेटेड चिप्स यूज करोगे तो ऑब्वियसली कहीं ना कहीं आपको कुछ ना कुछ तो नुकसान टेक्नोलॉजी लेवल पे डेफिनेटली होगा। बट चलो
सर अभी आप बिल्कुल
बताएं।
सही बोल रहे हैं सर। अभी आप देखिए, मलेशिया is also one of the bigger user of their Sukhoi 30 and other defense equipments, apart from India and some other countries which we are using. Now, Russia is not able to provide them a support for their maintenance and other things.
हाँ, it's a big
Now,
point.
India is offering that support because part of the equipments, I understand you may be the best persons to answer, but my understanding is part of the indigenization process and other thing. So we were in a position to have certain spare parts, whether all critical or major parts or something, so that India has offered them a long-term maintenance and sustainable things to maintain their aviation, as well as offering LAC, which is developed by India. So this is an opportunities for countries like India where they can step in and provide a backup to such thing. But it will be a loss to Russia if they continue in a longer term for
Yes.
financially as well as on technical ground.
ओके, चलिए नेक्स्ट पॉइंट पे आते हैं। बिल्कुल बात आपकी सही है। एचएएल के पास वो मेरे ख्याल से दे हैव गॉट दैट एक्सपर्टाइज जो वो मलेशिया को प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं। उन्होंने कहा कि आप हमें हमारे से अगर कोई एयरक्राफ्ट वगैरह खरीदेंगे जैसे एलसीए या और कोई, तो साथ में हम ये फैसिलिटी भी आपको देंगे एड ऑन। तो इसलिए इस मार्केटिंग
Correct.
वाला इशू हो गया। अच्छा,
Correct.
अभी काफ़ी लोगों को स्पेशली यूएसए में या यूरोपियन यूनियन में उनको लगा कि भाई लड़ाई तो रसिया और यूक्रेन के बीच में हो रही है, लॉस यूरोपियन यूनियन को हो रहा है अगर वहाँ से एक्सपोर्ट बंद होता है रसिया से, और एडवांटेज मिल रहा है इंडिया और चाइना को मेनली। ओके, अब इंडिया ने वहाँ से एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ाया, वट एवर द प्राइस दे आर सर्टेनली गेटिंग बेनिफिटेड। और साथ में लोग ये कह रहे हैं, मीन्स इट इज़ ए इंटरनेशनल न्यूज़, एक तो प्राइस, कम प्राइस पे ले रहे हैं आप, आपने अल्टरनेट रूट जो है वाया ईरान, शायद आपने लास्ट टाइम आपने ही बताया था, मैंने भी चेक किया, तो वो भी एक्सप्लोर हो रहा है। और तीसरा जो सबसे बड़ी बात है कि जो रशियन क्रूड हम मंगाते हैं उसको हम कन्वर्ट करते हैं गैसोलीन और डीजल में, और उसके बाद उसको एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं। यानी कि आपने लिया भी सस्ते दाम पे और ऊपर से आप एक्सपोर्ट भी कर रहे हैं। तो एक तरीके से ये हो गया कि रशिया के ऊपर जो सैंक्शंस लगी हैं उसकी वजह से इंडिया को फायदा हो रहा है अच्छा खासा। तो इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि इंडिया प्रोबली इन ए सार्केस्टिक वे पीपल विल से कि अगर उधर लड़ाई चलती रहे, सैंक्शन चलती रहे, तो इंडिया का इंटरेस्ट है कि चलता ही रहे, देर इज नो इशू। और उसकी वजह से जो हमारी इकोनॉमी है नेचुरली जब हम एक्सपोर्ट कर पाएंगे, और व्हीट का तो इन एनी केस फूड सिक्योरिटी इज नॉट ए मेजर इशू एज ऑन नाउ विद अस, तो हमारे यहाँ रेट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन भी कम होगा। तो यूरोपियन यूनियन में तो रेट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन भी ज़्यादा होना है, एज इट इज़ वहाँ पे महंगाई बढ़ रही है, अमेरिका में भी महंगाई बढ़ रही है। तो डू यू थिंक जो पूरा सिनेरियो बन रहा है इसमें इंडिया विल बी मोर कंफर्टेबल देन एनी अदर वेस्टर्न नेशंस?
Yes, sir. Let's say, sir, what is happening due to environmental and other reason, many of the European Union had stopped expansion of their refinery and installation of the new refinery from the last 10-15 years.
Oh.
Okay. Now, what is the implication of it? Because they were very well planned. Okay, what we need basically from refinery is the finished product, gasoline, diesel, LPG, and other thing, which we can buy from any other places. So why should we have a dirty industry at our place, in our country, in our soil? So that was the basic idea, where most of the European Union were not having an expansion of their refinery and new refineries. The biggest refining capacity is in US, next is China, and third is India. Now, considering all these factors, so US is having more than say 20% capacity of their total requirement, so they can export both crude as well as finished product. Earlier, they were not exporting because they were okay. Let me also tell you, US is also one of the biggest importer of the finished product also, because their mix is requirement basically in automobiles. So their requirement is gasoline is more than any other things, and in their refinery, which they can produce as per their where they get more value and import this thing. So US is unaffected as far as their import exports is concerned. Now Europe has not increased their capacity. Crude oil is also stopped because which were designed for Russian crude and other thing, they are not getting it or they have reduced it, but they need finished product. Now, which are the countries can handle? So China is the biggest, next is India, and some other countries where Russian companies had planned new refinery in various part of the world, like Gasneft has done it in Nayara in India and other things. So that was the part of it. So coming to the point, when India is now it is a value addition. So what is happening? Like we are importing gold, we are crafting our work, skill, handcraft, and other thing, and exporting the jewelry. Same thing was happening with the precious diamond or gold, stone and other things. India was importing this thing from Russia, South Africa, and other thing, added value and exporting. So value addition is the part which India was doing. Now you remove this particular thing, gold or diamond, you replace it with the word crude oil. So India is now importing more from Russia, which we are able to get it, and exporting the finished product. So it's because demand is more there. Now, when the product demand is more, the refinery margin increases as and when finished product prices are linked to the crude oil products. So when the crude oil, which is the raw material product price is high, the finished product price also goes up. So you get a higher margin. So earlier, suppose you are getting $6 a barrel, you will get $11 a barrel, $12 a barrel per margin which you get it. So even though you are handling the same crude, but the price difference is there, so your export or the price value addition is more. So if you look in the last quarter and other thing, though our India is having a concern for CAD, which is $24 billion is the difference between export and import, but still we are able to partially offset by exporting more of a finished product. Correct. So this is a blessing in disguise, you can say, it was not intentional, but since opportunities is there, so Indian companies are taking it and after value addition, exporting the products and which is going. So it's a because there are many countries are not in a position to have this kind of refining capacity, and you can't have it in a day. You require 3-4 years to build that capacity. So till then, China and Russia, India and US are in a position to export more finished product than any other countries.
That,
Remaining are Middle East countries, but their capacity is limited. So they can not go to that extent like China and India can do.
so we can enjoy as long as it is possible. That is one thing.
Yes, as long as this thing are there. But it is good, and it is not something negative. I will say it's a good for
It's
a
very,
country
very
because we are
positive. Very,
exporting.
very
It's
positive.
very positive. We
Very
should
positive.
not take it who's doing it. It is basically Forex is coming to India. Now, whether it comes from IT sector, whether it comes from jewelry, or whether it comes from refinery, or whether it comes from any other sector,
Of
as
course.
long as we are earning genuine export and
No, it's
Forex,
good.
it's good for country.
इट्स वेरी गुड. अभी जो एक इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट G7 की मीटिंग में आया वो ये आया कि जितने भी बायर नेशंस हैं, एंड आई थिंक अमेरिका का इंटेंशन ये है कि रशियन इकोनॉमी को क्रिपल किया जाए, लेकिन जो उसके जो एसोसिएटेड है ना, जैसे यूरोपियन यूनियन है, बाकी वर्ल्ड के नेशंस हैं, उनकी इकोनॉमी को किसी न किसी तरीके से प्रोटेक्ट किया जाए, जिससे यूएसए को बाकी लोग सपोर्ट करते रहें अगेंस्ट रशिया. अब उन्होंने जो एक प्रपोजल वहां पे आया है G7 पे कि इस पे प्राइस कैप लगा दिया जाए, जो रशियन ऑयल है उस पे प्राइस कैप लगा दिया जाए, और उसमें इंडिया और चाइना इनको भी इंक्लूड कर लिया जाए. इंडिया तो ऑलरेडी है ही, प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी इज देयर, तो दिस डिस्कशन इज गोइंग ऑन. तो उसमें क्या होगा, यूरोपियन यूनियन जो है वो भी कंटिन्यू रखेगा अपना इंपोर्ट. हम लोग तो इन एनी केस आज भी कर रहे हैं और तब भी करेंगे, और रसिया को जो फॉरेन एक्सचेंज की जो उसकी अर्निंग हो रही है वो कम हो जाएगी. तो एक तरीके से कार्टेलाइजेशन, बायर नेशंस का एक कार्टेलाइजेशन करने के उसमें है वो, दैट ऑप्शन दे आर एक्सप्लोरिंग. तो डू यू थिंक इट कैन वर्क आउट?
It can work out provided Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Venezuela, which are the major exporter of crude oil, join it. Now, out of this, two are under sanction. Out of three, which I named, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela, then we can say Iraq and other things. Iran and Venezuela are under US sanction. So until and unless they take some kind of relaxation on that, so some crude from Venezuela or Iran, they have to allow it to come to the market. Once that comes, then only extra crude can come in. Until unless that thing is not coming, it will again restricting the input, means the supply of crude has to increase. Now, from where it can come? Saudi is going ahead with the full capacity. Iraq is already going ahead with full capacity. Kuwait is going ahead. Malaysia and other thing. The only thing which is restricted or they are not allowed is Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. So until unless they come out with some device or some mechanism to allow Iran and Venezuela also to come out and allow to export more, then only production can come in and then only price can be capped in. Otherwise, it will be wishful. But as we have seen, for a certain period it was remaining, then again it jumps back to 120. And when the winter or the prediction is there, how severe this winter and other thing, and oil industry is very, very sensitive to emotion and other thing. Any news which is related to weather, whether it is related to war or crime and other thing, oil price is the first casualty which goes up or goes down. So it all depends how European Union, US, and other major economics country consider from where that additional oil can come in, restricting the Russian. Otherwise, price is not in their hand. Price is in the supplier country's hand, which is, as I said, Middle East and Africa and Venezuela.
I think that is very fair enough. Cartelization by buyers nations probably, unless जो आपने बताया कि ईरान, वेनेजुएला और ये सब कॉपरेट करें, सऊदी अरबिया भी, उससे बगैर वो पॉसिबल नहीं होगा. So
Actually, it's not the cooperation; it is the restriction on them by US on Iran as well as on Venezuela.
वेनेजुएला
So
दोनों के
until
ऊपर
those
सैंक्शन है.
sanctions and restrictions are removed, and that's what Iran is wanting. So it's a, but it may looks very simple for from a different point of view. Okay, why US is not aligned, but the US position is also very clear because they do not want proliferation of the nuclear because Iran is under doubtful of watch, and US is
Yes.
not happy with their things, the way things are happening. So I don't think it will be very easy for Europe and US to allow Iran to join in. Similar things are happening in Venezuela also. So these are the some very tricky question they have to handle that along with this Russian. And until unless supply is increased, price restriction will be a bit difficult for. Of course, as a buyer for country like India, it will be good if price of the crude oil is curtailed, but unfortunately it is not buyer's market, it is seller's market, and we have to accept it as of now until unless there is additional supply which comes from any other place.
So thank you, Girish. It has been a wonderful conversation and lot of knowledge you have imparted to all of us. So thank you so much, and we will see you again on the so many related issues which are coming up in the near future. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks to all your viewers. Thank you.
You heard the total conversation. इंडिया को एक्चुअली अगर आप देखें तो एडवांटेज है, बट ऑफ कोर्स ये कोई बड़ी अच्छी बात नहीं है कि अगर रसिया और यूक्रेन के बीच में लड़ाई लंबी चलती है और इंडिया उसका एडवांटेज लेता है, बट फैक्ट रिमेंस कि इंटरनेशनल सर्कमस्टांसेस ऐसी हैं कि इंडिया को सस्ते दाम पे ऑयल इंपोर्ट करने को मिल रहा है रसिया से, एंड समहाउ मोदी हैज़ बीन एबल टू वर्क आउट दोज लॉजिस्टिक डिटेल्स वाया ईरान, विच इज़ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। और साथ में आप देखें तो इसी को कहते हैं कि अपॉर्चुनिटी मस्ट बी एक्सप्लॉइटेड। इंडिया डीजल और गैसोलीन का एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ाकर अपना करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट कम कर रहा है, विच इज़ अ बिग थिंग। एक्सपोर्ट इज ऑलवेज गुड, यू गेट एक्स्ट्रा डॉलर्स। सो थैंक यू सो मच। प्लीज लाइक, शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब। आई विल सी यू इन नेक्स्ट वीडियो।